All right, guys, welcome to First and Goal. I'm your host, Flavo Rihanna, brought to you by Four Corner Sports. All right, guys, so we just ended up finishing up week one in the NFL season, and gotta say, I was actually pretty excited about the NFL season. Didn't disappoint at all, regardless if there was no fans at every single game. It was still pretty good. So the season ended up starting off between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans, and I don't know. I felt like we're seeing what happens when teams don't have an NFL preseason, but overall that game was fairly okay. But my God, guys, if if you're a resident in the city of Houston, we have a problem because it just didn't seem like the Texans are gonna be able to take that extra level, extra hump just to get to where they want to be at. It looks like the Houston Texans regressed. And I know that might be an over exaggerate an over exaggeration, but hear me out on this. So the reason why I say that is because of the fact that look what your GM Bill O'Brien, your head coach, ended up doing. You traded away easily a top 3 wide receiver to Arizona for David Johnson and a second round pick. So I wasn't a big fan of that trade. Neither was anybody else in the world of sports because you know why? You don't trade away a wide receiver like that for nothing. I'm not saying that David Johnson is nothing, but think about it. David Johnson hasn't had a healthy season in a couple of years. So Houston is pretty much banking on him to become healthy. All right. And now you got to hope and pray that this second round pick that you're going to get from Arizona really pans out well. But who knows? It's like a dime a dozen. You might miss on that pick. All right. You might not even get, another DeAndre Hopkins. It might be worse. I mean, who knows? You might get like somebody like Todd Pinkston of all people, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Todd Pinkston. I mean, yes, there is. I mean, you just look good. You just look good out there when Terrell Owens was on the opposite end. But getting back to what I was saying before, yeah, it just felt like Deshaun Watson looked like he didn't know who to throw to. All right. Sure, you have Will Fuller. All right. David Johnson. You have Duke Johnson. Who I forgot who was the other running back that they have because they have like a 3 running back committee. It was like Carlos Hyde. Yeah, Carlos Hyde. And I don't know. It just didn't seem like everything was like meshing. It just felt like Deshaun Watson did everything that he could. Unfortunately, it looks like Houston is in a regress back to where they were at before. And I just feel really bad for Deshaun Watson because he signed that deal. Great deal, by the way. Great lucrative deal. But now you stuck long term on in a situation where you might not be able to win games. Sure, you might be able to compete to try to get into the playoffs because of the AFC South. But from what I've seen in just their game against the Chiefs, I can't see them making the playoffs. I can't. But they have the benefit of playing in the AFC South because you got Jacksonville, you got Tennessee, and you got Indianapolis. Tennessee didn't look so great in their game. Jacksonville looked decent. Minshew mania, emerges still. But, that's what happened as for week one. With Texans and Chiefs. Sunday, we had all the games outside of Steelers and Broncos. But starting off, it was Jets at Bills. Bills look really good this year. Bills look really good. Bills look like they could challenge the Patriots, on winning the AFC East crown. Sam Darnold, on the other hand, I'm not a Jets fan. My father's a Jets fan, so I support them. I have friends that are Jets fans, and I understand them. But man, when are you guys gonna give this guy some help? I mean, the Jets had an opportunity of drafting Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Rager. You could have drafted Jordan Jefferson too, or Justin Jefferson, I think his name is, from the Vikings. He did none of that. You got yourself another offensive lineman. Now I get it. You want to make sure that he's protected, but you lost on your best receiver, Robbie Anderson. All right, you can't bank on Le'Veon Bell being the type of player to move on forward for you as a receiver and a running back. I mean, from what I've seen from Le'Veon Bell is not the same player that we've seen him playing in Pittsburgh. And then on top of that, you have what's it called? They just look like they're in a big mess. And Josh Allen looks like the real deal. Throwing for 312 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 57 yards rushing, a rushing TD. He looked unstoppable. I mean, yes, he's doing that against the Jets, but he put up great numbers. And anybody that has him on fantasy, you should probably start him because he's most likely gonna end up repeating similar numbers. Maybe not 300 yards passing every single time, but he's definitely gonna run for you. All right. And wow, Stephon Diggs had a really good debut in the Buffalo Bills uniform, catching 8 receptions for 86 yards. I mean, Buffalo looks tough this year. I mean, for the AFC East is going to be definitely, Buffalo and New England, being the leaders of that division, because it's no longer going to be New England being the sole leaders. But Buffalo's going to, get New England a good run for their money. So Buffalo ended up winning that game. They started off the season 1-0, and the Jets are now 0-1. Moving on. Seahawks and Falcons. Seahawks ended up traveling towards the East Coast, and they're traveling towards Atlanta. And what a game. I mean, Russell Wilson does prove why he is a top 5 player in this game. Yes, I said it. He is a top 5 player in this game. So, Russell Wilson had a superb game. 4 touchdowns, 322 yards passing, 29 yards rushing. All right. This guy was a beast, field general. He ended up dominating the game, helping the Seahawks score as much as 38 points. DK Metcalf looks like the real deal. He's extending out from what he was in his rookie season. Started off game 1 with 4 receptions, 95 yards receiving, and a touchdown. And Matty Ice, he's always going to give you good numbers, 450 yards, passing, but 2 touchdowns, an interception. I don't know. I just feel like Matty Ice will just give you inflated numbers. He's going to give you great fantasy numbers, but it just doesn't seem like it translates. And what is going on with Julio Jones? Why isn't that? It's not really Julio Jones. I take that back. What's wrong with the offensive coordinators and everybody that's an offensive coach? Why can't they figure out a way to get Julio Jones into the end zone? This guy had 9 receptions for 157 yards. All right. No TDs whatsoever. All right. Whoever has Calvin Ridley on fantasy football is going to do great, because Julio Jones is just simply not going to be able to get, touchdowns. It just seems like last year he didn't get enough. I think he ended up having a couple, if I'm not mistaken, like 3 or 4 or something like that. I had Julio Jones a couple years ago, and I regret having him just because he doesn't score any touchdowns. I had Calvin Ridley last year for fantasy football, and he did superb just because they're going to double up on Julio, and Ridley's going to get, the majority of the touchdowns. But yeah, Ridley and Julio ended up having monster numbers. Both had 9 receptions. Both went over 130 yards receiving. Ridley had 130 yards. Julio had 157. The only difference is that Ridley ended up having 2 touchdowns. I don't know. I mean, Falcons are in a tough division. They got the Saints, they got the Panthers, and now you have Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that division. I mean, can't really lose at home, especially when you have the Seahawks traveling towards the East Coast. West Coast teams normally don't do well, on East Coast times. But yeah, it's just unfortunate at this point. Moving on. Bears and Lions. Bears ended up traveling up to Ford Field to face the Detroit Lions, and I was very skeptical on this. I actually had picked the Lions to win this game, but Bears ended up coming out with the victory on a 4-point lead. They ended up winning 27-23. Reason why I had picked the Lions to win, I figured Matt Stafford at some point was going to get, started off the season with a win. Start off the season, feeling good. No. Matt Stafford's another one. Give you great numbers. This guy will pass about anywhere between like 4,000 to 5,000 yards, but he's not going to win the big one, all right? Had an opportunity of winning the game on the final drive, blows it with an interception, all right? He ended the game with 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 297 yards passing. Adrian Peterson, Adrian Peterson ended up rewinding back the clock, a couple years back, because he had 93 yards rushing. I mean, when do we expect Adrian Peterson now having 93 yards rushing? I mean, at the age that he's having, he's not supposed to be having these type of numbers. But congratulations to Adrian Peterson for putting on performance like that. But reason why I also had the Lions winning, Mitchell Trubisky. Once they had announced that Trubisky was going to be the week 1 starter, I'm thinking, all right, cool. Lions got this. Trubisky, he didn't show anything, last year. It might be a repeat of this year. As of right now, due to week 1, I'm wrong. I think maybe the fact that Nick Foles is his backup for right now, and he feels that pressure that he needs to perform well. If not, he's going to lose his job, and he's going to be a backup moving on forward. He did well. 3 touchdowns, 242 yards passing, and Anthony Miller, had a superb day, his wide receiver, with 4 receptions, 76 yards, and a touchdown. Bears did well. I mean, I figured that the Bears defense would have done a little bit better, but I mean, you can't complain. You got the victory. A win is a win, like they say. All right. So Bears move on. They start off the season 1-0. Lions, as usual, can't get a win. Sorry for all you Lions fans out there. 0-1. All right. Moving on. Now this was exciting right here. If you like offense, you should have been watching this game. Packers ended up traveling up to Minnesota at US Bank Stadium or US Bank Arena, whatever they call it. All right. That bad man, Aaron Rodgers, does it again. There's a lot of talk about Aaron Rodgers. Does he still have it? What are the Packers doing? I don't know what the Packers are doing. They wasted a 1st-round pick on Jordan Love. All right. Could have used it on another receiver or some, tight end or something like that, offensive lineman. Nope. They use it on a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is pissed. He's like, all right, guys, you know what? You want to draft my predecessor? All right, cool. I'm going to make sure that he sits on the bench for quite some time because I still have it. I'm not ready to give it up. Aaron Rodgers ended up having a game with 4 touchdowns, 360 yards passing, all right? Willing the Packers to 43 points, all right? Whoever had Aaron Rodgers, whoever had Davante Adams, wow. Talk about crazy game. Davante Adams had 14 receptions for 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. All right. What's it called? One of the guys in our fantasy football league, had Davante Adams, and we ended up playing by PPR. This guy had about like 41 points just all by Davante Adams alone. All right. Crazy enough. Allen Lazard, he had a good game himself too. 4 receptions for 63 yards, 1 touchdown. And Aaron Jones, 66 yards, 1 touchdown rushing. Amazing. It was one of those games where it's like we got spoiled as NFL fans watching this game. Kirk Cousins did his thing too. Did it match Aaron Rodgers' numbers? I mean, well, who can really outside of Patrick Mahomes? Cousins had 259 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Go figure, Kirk Cousins. Dalvin Cook had 50 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns. And then Adam Thielen does what Adam Thielen does. Caught 6 receptions for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. What a game. what's it called? Aaron Rodgers. Like you would have thought that I would have been, washed up. No. If anybody that has Aaron Rodgers, I would advise them to start him because a determined Aaron Rodgers is gonna put up some numbers right now. And watch out, NFC North, because he's coming. All right. We had a game in the NFC East, division rivals between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington football team. All right. The debut of the Washington football team name. So, Eagles traveled out to FedEx Field in Washington, and Carson Wentz, I don't know. I felt like we saw a repeat of Carson Wentz of last year. Some can say that the Eagles' offensive line is the reason why he ended up getting hurt. Some people can say that he got hurt, he got himself in these type of situations. Carson Wentz got sacked 8 times. 8 times. At some point, it's not just the offensive line, it's you. You got to get rid of the ball quick. And I felt like we're seeing a repeat of Carson Wentz of last year. He's not getting it. There was at one point it looked like a similar play where he ended up, he got sacked, and it looked like something similar to what we had seen in the playoffs last year against the Seahawks, where he ended up getting knocked out by Jadeveon Clowney. I don't know. I mean, Philly had the opportunity of winning this game. There was no reason why Washington won it. I mean, Carson Wentz is the better quarterback over Dwayne Haskins. I don't know. I mean, Philly has receivers. You got Jalen Reagor, Alshon, Deshaun. All right. You don't have Nelson Aguilar? Nelson Aguilar ended up traveling to Las Vegas to play for the Raiders. You got Boston Scott. I don't know. You have weapons. You have Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz. I didn't expect for the Eagles to only score, that minimal amount of points, 17 points. Sure, once threw for 270, 2 touchdowns, but it's the 2 interceptions that were costly too, and they were costly at the wrong moments. Dallas Goedert had a day, 8 receptions for 101 yards. I mean, there's debate right now. Should I start, if I have fantasy, should I start Goddard over Ertz? I don't know about that. Wentz and Ertz have that special connection, and maybe be just getting red hot, but we'll see. But Dwayne Haskins, he played the game exceptionally well, the way that he was supposed to. Only 178 yards, 1 touchdown, and you had Peyton Barber with 29 rushing yards and scoring 2 touchdowns. I mean, they weren't superb numbers, but a win is a win, like I said. In this league, you have to just pile up as many wins as possible, just because you'll take a win on however it is. All right. But Washington got the win. Eagles, I felt like they lost it. They gave it away, and Washington was just taking advantage of the situation. Dolphins at Patriots. Dolphins ended up traveling up to New England, and we got the debut of Cam Newton, all right, wearing a New England uniform. It looked a little weird at first. Wasn't used to it, but I gotta say, seeing Cam Newton play was pretty refreshing, because 20 years having Tom Brady at center, you already know what you're gonna have. He's in a dink and dunk. New England hasn't had a quarterback that will run the ball the way that Newton does. That's a threat, and the people that he has, in his offense fits better for Newton as opposed to Brady. Brady can't even run. All right. You got snails that are faster than Brady. And Newton, had a day for himself. 155 yards, 75 yards rushing, 2 rushing TDs, didn't throw a touchdown. And Targ had Julian Edelman throwing him 5 receptions, and Edelman ended up getting about 57 yards of receiving. And Patriots ended up winning the game, 21-11. Ryan Fitzpatrick ended the game with 191 yards, 3 interceptions. Devontae Parker had 4 receptions for 47 yards. Dolphins fans, don't be calling out Tua Tagovailoa just yet. Let that boy sit. Let him learn the playbook. Let him understand the game. I game speed. What's it called? It's just one game. You guys will be fine. Not 100% sure who the Dolphins are playing next. I don't know. I got to look it up. Give me 1 second now. Let me just look it up on fantasy right now. Because if it's the Jets, you guys will be fine. Because the Jets will lose to anybody. Oh no, you're facing Buffalo. Oh man. Good luck. All right, never mind. All right, so moving on. Raiders go and travel towards Carolina to face the Carolina Panthers. Teddy Bridgewater's debut, and this was actually a pretty good game. Derek Carr. I'm sorry, David Carr is the older brother of Derek. Derek Carr had a decent game. 239 yards. Going for 1 touchdown passing. But it wasn't Derek Carr that was the story. Josh Jacobs. All right. This guy, I knew that he was going to be good because most running backs from Alabama tend to be great. All right. And he just seems like another running back that's just carrying on that tradition. I mean, you got running backs like Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Mark Ingram, so on and so forth. Not saying Trent Richardson because he's just an outlier. Was a bust. But yeah, Josh Jacobs had a really great game. 3 touchdowns, 93 yards. Sensational. I mean, whoever had him in fantasy definitely should have been able to win their game. Henry Ruggs, his debut in the NFL, had 3 receptions for 55 yards. The speedster, did well against the Panthers defense. But yeah, it was Josh Jacobs led the way. He ruined and spoiled, Teddy Bridgewater's debut in a Carolina Panthers uniform. But Christian McCaffrey was no slouch either. I mean, he ran for 96 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, 3 receptions for 38 yards. And Robbie Anderson had 6 receptions for 115 yards and 1 touchdown. This was all pure offense, all right? This was a very close game. Went down to the wire. Unfortunately, Panther fans ended up losing at home. You couldn't stop the run. You couldn't stop Josh Jacobs from getting into the end zone, and that was your biggest demise. But you guys move on forward. Just Raiders got a must needed win. In a tough division where you have Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. You got the Chargers, and yeah, they needed that win. Colts at Jaguars. Phillip Rivers had his debut in an Indianapolis Colts uniform. Phillip Rivers ended up piling up. What Phillip Rivers does, 363 yards, 1 touchdown. No surprise in these 2 interceptions. All right. Charger fans are probably, glad and happy that they're not having to deal with the interception machine that is Phillip Rivers. Nyheim Hines ends up having 28 rushing yards, had 1 rushing TD, 8 receptions for 45 yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. We had some bad news if you're a Colts fan. Fortunately, Marlon Mack is most likely going to miss the rest of the year. Ended up tearing his Achilles. It's unfortunate just because he was a really good running back. Now he's probably going to be derailed for about a year. Who knows, maybe 18 months, but we'll see what happens. I mean, it's just scary just because of the fact that he's a running back and he depends on that explosiveness, and who knows if he might be the same player when he comes back from injury. Most players are not, and that's just the sad part about it. But now if you're the Colts, Nyheim Hines might be your starter, your RB1. Kind of fits well with Phillip Rivers. He kind of reminds me of Hines reminds me of Austin Eckler. He'd be most likely being able to be used in that same manner of screens and short runs and etc. But Gardner Minshew mania is still living. He had 3 touchdowns, 173 yards. He wheeled his Jaguars to a win on a 27-20 victory. Keelan Cole ended up having 5 receptions for 47 yards and a touchdown. Minshew mania still lives on. I favored the Colts going into this game because I wasn't sure how Gardner Minshew was going to be able to respond to the Colts, because how Philip Rivers was going to have, T.Y. Hilton, Marlon Mack, but that wasn't the case. I mean, Jaguars win 27-20. This was an easy one to pick. I mean, if anybody that picked the Browns to win this game, I don't know what's wrong with you guys, because the Browns ended up traveling to Baltimore to face the Baltimore Ravens, to face the reigning, defending MVP, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson put on a show. 275 yards passing, 3 TDs, 45 yards rushing. Did you see that run when he was juking people? Can't stop Jackson. All right. Action Jackson is here to stay. And Lamar Jackson, ended up running wild and doing whatever he wanted. Him and that Baltimore defense, the Baltimore offense, did anything that they wanted to do against Cleveland. Cleveland still looks like Cleveland. Cleveland Browns haven't done anything at all, only scoring 6 points. Baker Mayfield had a bad game, 189 yards, 1 interception, 1 touchdown. And then he had Kareem Hunt rushing for 72 yards with 4 receptions and 9 yards. Although Beckham didn't do much better, he had about 5 receptions. I don't know. I mean, I think we're seeing what Baker Mayfield might truly be. He might be just an average quarterback that just got hyped up because he ended up getting the Browns a victory a couple years ago over the New York Jets, snapping their long losing streak. I don't know. I mean, there was a debate that is Baker Mayfield, that guy. I don't know. I had high hopes for him. He was the number 1 overall pick, but it just seems like right now, like he just doesn't seem to get it. Maybe it was just too much pressure for him to be the number 1 overall pick, the first quarterback being taken on a very stacked NFL, draft. They faced a better team in Baltimore. Baltimore looks like Super Bowl contenders, right? They look like they could be easily challenging the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC title game to see who moves on to Super Bowl. We're not going to get too far ahead because we don't know what's going to happen, injuries, so on and so forth. But, Ravens look really good right now. I mean, I would not want to be facing the Ravens right now. Lamar Jackson just looks better. He looks like a better passer this year. He looks like he's, excelling more in his growth. Baker Mayfield doesn't look much better right now. It looks like we're seeing more of the same. And I don't know. There's a lot of questions being, asked right now in Cleveland about Baker Mayfield. But they have a game against the Cincinnati Bengals, so this Thursday. So we'll see what happens against that. But speaking of Cincinnati, on to Cincinnati right now. It's so hard because I'm so used to calling them the San Diego Chargers. The LA Chargers ended up traveling to Cincinnati to face Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow ended up making his debut. He was the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. And he had a decent game from what I was expecting. He had 193 yards, 1 interception, 46 rushing yards. He ended up scoring his first touchdown, but it was a rushing touchdown. But it wasn't enough. Even though we had an AJ Green sighting, he caught 5 receptions for 51 yards. It wasn't enough to, overcome Tyrod Taylor and the LA Chargers. Tyrod Taylor had 208 yard passing. Austin Eckler had 84 yards rushing. But there was a controversial play. It came down to the end where it was one of those plays where it was like a push off was called for offensive pass interference on AJ Green. I don't know if I would have thrown that flag right there. He ended up extending out his arm. It looked close enough, but that could have been the game right there. Burrow threw a nice pass. AJ Green extended out his arm a little bit. Got called for offensive PI, and the Bengals couldn't recover from there. But the Chargers ended up getting a victory. They are 1-0 right now, and the Cincinnati Bengals are 0-1. We had a game between the Cardinals and the NFC representatives of the Super Bowl from this past year, the 49ers. DeAndre Hopkins ended up making his debut in an Arizona Cardinals uniform, and he looked pretty good today. He looked pretty good that day. Had 14 receptions, 151 yards. Kyler Murray did his thing. He ran wild. He ran buck wild. 230 yards passing, 1 TD passing, 1 interception, 91 yards rushing with a rushing touchdown. Kyler Murray put up some fantasy numbers that any fantasy owner would have loved. And the Cardinals, they shocked the 49ers. 24-20. Jimmy G ended up throwing for 259 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Robert Mostert ran for 56 yards, 4 receptions, 95 yards receiving, but it just wasn't enough because that dynamic duo of Murray and Hopkins was just too much for the 49ers. I'm not going to say that the Cardinals are going to be the best team in that division. It's just one game, but Cardinals look really good. I feel bad for Deshaun Watson because his boy DeAndre Hopkins is, killing it. He killed it in week 1 with 14 receptions. Didn't have a touchdown, but 14 receptions is a lot. It's a lot. The big game that everybody was anticipating. It was Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to New Orleans to face the New Orleans Saints. Tom Brady's, debut as a Buccaneer. All right, 20 years in New England, goes into his 21st year and ends up starting for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who would have thought that he would have been starting for the Buccaneers? But he didn't look that great. 239 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He scored a rushing touchdown. But all that being said, he did starting to look like his own age. Looking 42, 43, however old he is. Look, man, Father Time is undefeated for a reason. And I just feel like this could have been age. This could have been, that he's having his new teammates trying to get used to one another. But yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like they weren't clicking. But I'm not gonna jump too much into it just because of the fact that they are facing the New Orleans Saints. They are facing, a team who could possibly make the Super Bowl. They're Super Bowl contenders. I got 4 teams, that could make the Super Bowl. I got the Saints, the Buccaneers, the 49ers, and the Seattle Seahawks. Those 4 teams could easily represent the NFC, all right? And what's it called? Tom Brady just had a bad game. It may have been age, may have been that his teammates weren't, meshing well. This is week 1. They didn't really have a preseason. They really weren't able to train together, like that. Saints and Drew Brees. They pretty much have the same team. Brees ended up passing for 160 yards, 2 TDs. Kamara has 16 rushing yards, 5 receptions, 151 yards receiving, and a touchdown. So yeah, I want to say that the next time the Buccaneers face the Saints, it's most likely not going to be the same outcome. It might be closer. Maybe the Saints end up winning, but yeah, it wasn't the best. It wasn't the best outcome for Tom Brady. Bill Belichick must have been, smirking from ear to ear, seeing Tom Brady struggle. But, like I said, Father Time, it's undefeated for a reason. All right. And then we had our Sunday night football game between the Dallas Cowboys and the LA Rams. They debuted their home stadium, SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, and it looks amazing. I mean, once they allow fans to go there, I mean, believe me, I'm gonna try to, end up buying a plane ticket to go over there. The stadium looks gorgeous. I mean, palm trees all around. It just looks like a next gen type of stadium. But yeah, Dak Prescott had a decent game. He had 266 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 30 yards rushing. Ezekiel Elliott had a great game, 96 yards rushing, with 1 rushing TD, 3 receptions, and 31 yards receiving. But it wasn't enough to outdo the Rams. Rams had just scored 3 more points more than them. Rams ended up winning the game 20-17. Jared Goff passed for 275 yards. An interception he threw, but Malcolm Brown, he was the story for the LA Rams. Ended up rushing for 79 yards rushing, scoring 2 rushing TDs, and that's all that the Rams needed. It was a play towards the last 30 seconds of the ball game where Dak Prescott was en route to possibly scoring. They were in position to possibly win the game. But Dak Prescott ended up throwing a pass to Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup has single man coverage, man-to-man coverage, and he got a good beat off of his receiver. Off of his defender, but he got called for offensive pass interference because he extended out his hand. Again, same situation what happened in Cincinnati against AJ Green. Did I feel like he ended up deserving offensive pass interference? You know what? I'm gonna say no. And only reason I'm saying that is just because you call that play. Now you're putting yourself at risk of you're putting the other team at risk of losing the game. And they're throwing the flag. Cowboys ended up, getting a penalty because of that. I think it was like a 10-yard penalty. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys couldn't recover from there. If the refs would have just swallowed the flag, they never would have thrown it. Who knows what would have happened? Maybe overtime. Maybe Dallas ends up winning the game. I just felt like at that very moment, I would have not thrown that flag. It's too costly. It's too costly right there. But Rams ended up picking up the victory. As of right now, the Washington football team are the leaders of the NFC East. But we have one more game. We have 2 more games. We have our 2 Monday Night Football games. The return of Big Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to New Jersey to face the New York Football Giants and Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. Honestly, I feel like Saquon Barkley has to be like one of the most overrated, players on the Giants. He gets like all this recognition whatsoever. I'm a big Giants fan, all right? Thank God, like I can root for Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson is my favorite, player in the NFL. So I root for the Seahawks whenever the Giants and the Seahawks are not playing. But 6 yards? 6 yards? Jeez, man. It's been the amount of times that I feel like the Giants put all their resources in the offensive line and it still doesn't produce anything whatsoever. Daniel Jones looked decent. He threw a bomb, from 40 yards out or like 35 yards out to Darius Slayton. Perfect. Slayton ended up having 2 touchdowns, but everything went downhill. because one, there was no run game whatsoever. Two, they had a point, the Giants, to get the lead. They had a 19-play drive. And Daniel Jones ends up throwing an interception in the red zone. Man, like, it's the same old Giants. It really is the same old Giants, all right? I honestly think that the Jets are way better than the Giants at this point. And that's that Sam Darnold doesn't have anybody to throw to. Big Ben had a good game. You know, he looked superb. I mean, he looked pretty healthy. He didn't look like the elbow didn't bother him whatsoever. James Conner, I mean, unfortunately, he got hurt. But Benny Snell Jr. ended up picking up the load when it comes to running. You know, just really disappointed that the Giants, you know, again, they're looking like the bad news Bears. They're looking like the bad news Bears at this point. And it just sucks because I was really hoping the Giants can at least do something. I predicted them to at least get like 7-9. You know, from what I'm seeing, you know, off of week 1, I'm looking like they might be like a 4-12 team at this point. Go figure. But yeah, the Giants ended up losing that game. It was bad. And then we had our last Monday Night Football game. It was the Tennessee Titans versus the Denver Broncos. And wow, I mean, Bill Belichick, he really looks like the type of guy that he knows exactly what he's doing, because Belichick ended up letting go to missed his first 3 field goals. And I'm like, wow. If I'm Mike Vrabel, I'm like cringing. I'm like, how are you missing? How are you missing? And you're supposed to be this good. What went wrong? You know, it's like Belichick knows exactly what he's doing. Like, as if like, all right, this guy's gonna end up sucking right now. Let me get rid of him. You know, a couple months before, so some idiot team can sign him. Like, oh well, Belichick got rid of him. You know, we'll get his scraps, and then it backfires. But yeah, Gostkowski ended up missing his first 3 field goals. Pretty decent game. Derrick Henry did his thing as usual, rushing over 90 yards. But it just came down to the very end. Just seemed like Denver wasn't equipped to take advantage of those missed field goals. A lot of 3-and-outs of punts and etc. But Tennessee ends up, you know, coming out with a victory by a game-winning field goal by Stephen Gostkowski. It wasn't the 3rd time that round. Well, the 4th time was his lucky charm. He ended up hitting a game-winning field goal to help, you know, get the Titans, you know, with a victory. 16-14 Titans. What a week 1 it was. I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, that's football for you. And I was pretty, you know, happy to see that football is back. We'll see what happens moving on forward, you know, into week 2. Week 2, we have, like I said, Thursday night, Bengals and Browns. Giants go to Chicago. They face the Bears. 49ers come to, you know, MetLife, you know, to face the Jets. Falcons go to Jerry World to face the Cowboys. Lions and Packers. Lions go to Lambeau. Jaguars and Titans rivalry game. Jaguars go to Tennessee. And then you got the Vikings and Colts. And you got the Bills and the Dolphins. That should be interesting. I got the Bills winning that game. Rams and Eagles. Ooh, that should be an interesting one. I'm gonna go with Rams on this one just because if we see a repeat of what happened this past Sunday with Carson Wentz, Rams are gonna end up winning the game. Broncos and Steelers. I got Steelers, you know, being 2-0. Broncos 0-2. I just trust Ben Roethlisberger over the quarterback Drew. Panthers and Buccaneers. I got Buccaneers bouncing back. There's no way that Tom Brady's gonna start off the year 0-2. Washington versus Cardinals. Cardinals end up going 2-0. Washington goes 1-1. Chiefs at Chargers. Chiefs end up playing at SoFi. Chargers make their debut at SoFi. Chiefs, ruined their homecoming. Chiefs end up winning. They're gonna go 2-0. Chargers go 1-1. Ravens at Texans. I think this is gonna be a blowout. It might be like 36-3, but not. I wouldn't be surprised. And then Patriots travel up all the way to Seattle at CenturyLink. I got the Seahawks winning that game. I got Seahawks winning that game about 30-21. And then our Monday Night Football game for September 21st is going to be Saints and Raiders. I got the Saints winning, the game at Las Vegas. Saints win the game 29-23. Saints. All right, guys, that's all I have for you guys for today. That is our episode with First and Goal. I'm your host, Flavo Rihanna. For any more updates, check us out on Twitter. Follow us at Four Corner Sports NY for Twitter, IG, and yeah, that'll be it. All right, guys. Have a good night, guys. Bye. Oh, what the hell?